The stagecoach rattled into Hillsboro, New Mexico, just as the November sun painted the dusty streets in shades of copper and gold. And Priscilla Sawyer knew by the way the driver refused to meet her eyes that her reputation had arrived before she did. It was 1882, and the mining town sprawled across the high desert landscape like a promise half-kept, all wooden storefronts and canvas tents, the smell of ore dust mixing with wood smoke in the thin mountain air. Priscilla stepped down from the coach with as much dignity as she could muster, her calico dress rumpled from 3 days of travel, her dark blonde hair escaping its pins in ways that would have horrified her mother back in St. Louis. But her mother was 6 months in the ground, and the debts her father left behind had made certain choices for Priscilla that no respectable woman should have had to make. The other passengers collected their belongings and scattered like leaves before a storm, not one of them acknowledging her presence. Priscilla had expected that. What she had not expected was the bone-deep exhaustion that made her legs tremble as she stood on the boardwalk, her single carpetbag clutched in both hands. She had been traveling for weeks, working her way west through towns that grew smaller and judgments that grew harsher, and Hillsboro was supposed to be far enough from her past that she might finally draw breath without tasting shame. The Silver Bell stood 3 buildings down, its painted sign creaking in the wind. Priscilla counted the coins in her reticule for the 3rd time that hour, knowing she had just enough for 2 nights' lodging if she did not eat much. 2 nights to find work, any work that would not require her to return to the life she had fled. She was only 22 years old, and some stubborn part of her soul still believed in second chances. The inn's front room smelled of lye soap and old tobacco. A pot-bellied stove radiated heat in the corner, and several men sat around a table playing cards, their conversation dying the moment Priscilla crossed the threshold. Behind the desk stood a woman built like a barrel, her steel-gray hair pulled back so tight it seemed to stretch her face into a permanent expression of disapproval. "I need a room," Priscilla said, trying to keep her voice steady. "2 nights, please." The innkeeper looked her up and down with eyes that catalogued every detail, from the quality of Priscilla's worn boots to the absence of a wedding ring on her left hand. "We are full up," she said flatly, "but the sign outside says you have vacancies. For respectable folk. We do not rent rooms to your kind." The woman practically spat the last 2 words. Heat flooded Priscilla's cheeks. "You do not know anything about me." "I know enough. Mabel Pritchard's cousin works at the hotel in Silver City. Word travels fast in mining country, miss. We do not want your sort bringing trouble to decent establishments." The innkeeper crossed her arms over her substantial bosom. "There is a tent settlement east of town. Try your luck there." The card players were staring now, their expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. Priscilla felt something crack inside her chest, some last fragile shell of hope. "Please," she heard herself whisper, "I have money, I just need somewhere to sleep." "I said no rooms for ruined women. Now get out before I have my husband throw you out." Priscilla stood frozen, her humiliation complete. She had known scorn before, had felt the weight of judging eyes, but something about this moment in this dusty inn in this forsaken town finally broke through her defenses. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she would not let them fall, would not give these strangers the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "The lady is my wife." The voice came from behind her, deep and calm and absolutely certain. Priscilla turned to find a man standing in the doorway, his broad shoulders blocking the fading sunlight. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes the color of winter sky. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowboy, denim pants dusty from the trail, a faded blue shirt, worn leather vest, and a gun belt slung low on his hips. His face was weathered by sun and wind, making him hard to age, though Priscilla guessed he was somewhere near 30. "Your wife." The innkeeper's voice dripped skepticism. The stranger walked forward with an easy confidence, spurs jingling softly with each step. He moved to stand beside Priscilla, close enough that she could smell horse and leather and something clean like sage. "That is what I said. We have been traveling separately. I came ahead to scout work at the mines while she finished settling affairs back east. She is not wearing a ring. Lost it crossing a river 3 days back. Current was stronger than we expected." He pulled a leather wallet from his vest and extracted several bills, laying them on the desk with deliberate care. "We will take your best room. This should cover a week, with meals included." The innkeeper stared at the money, her expression calculating. It was clearly more than double the normal rate. A week is a long stay. We have been on the trail a long time. My wife deserves some comfort and rest. He said the word wife with such casual certainty that even Priscilla almost believed him. "What is your name, Mr. Travis Xander?" "I have been working the cattle ranches down south, but I hear there is good money to be made in the mines if a man does not mind hard labor." He glanced at Priscilla with those startling blue eyes, and she saw something in them she could not quite name. Not pity exactly, but perhaps recognition, as if he understood what it meant to be judged and found wanting. "Is there a problem with us staying here?" The innkeeper's hands twitched toward the money like birds circling seed. The internal battle played out across her face, greed warring with righteousness. Finally, she swept the bills off the desk and tucked them into her apron. "Room 6, top of the stairs, end of the hall. Supper is at 6. You are late tonight, but I will have the girl bring up a tray." "Much obliged." Travis took the key she offered and turned to Priscilla, extending his arm like a true gentleman. "Shall we, darling?" Priscilla's mind spun as she took his arm, her fingers trembling as they rested on his sleeve. They climbed the narrow stairs in silence, the innkeeper's suspicious gaze following them until they rounded the landing. Travis unlocked room 6 and gestured for her to enter first. The room was small but clean, with a double bed covered in a faded quilt, a washstand with a chipped pitcher and basin, and a single window overlooking the street. The moment the door closed behind them, Priscilla stepped away from Travis, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Why did you do that?" she asked. He set her carpetbag on the bed and moved to the window, giving her space. In the waning light, his profile could have been carved from stone. "Seemed like you needed help. You do not even know me." "I know enough." He turned to face her, and she saw weariness in the lines around his eyes. "I know what it is like to be turned away from shelter. I know how it feels when people decide who you are before you open your mouth." "But you told her I was your wife. You paid for a week." "I cannot possibly repay you for that. Did not ask you to." He pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, I know this situation is not ideal, but the way I see it, you needed a safe place to stay, and I have been sleeping on the ground for 2 months. This room has an actual bed, and that is luxury enough for me. I will bed down on the floor. You take the bed, lock the door behind me when I leave, and in the morning we can figure out what comes next." Priscilla studied him, trying to understand his angle. Men did not help women like her without expecting something in return. "What do you want from me?" Pain flashed across his face, quick as lightning. "Nothing. I want nothing from you except maybe the courtesy of not assuming the worst of me." Shame colored her cheeks. "I am sorry. I have learned not to trust kind gestures." "Yeah, well, I have learned that the world has a way of grinding people down until they forget what kindness looks like." He settled his hat back on his head. I am going to see about getting some feed for my horse and maybe find a whiskey. You rest. I will be back later, and I will knock 3 times so you know it is me. Wait. Priscilla's voice stopped him at the door. I do not even know why you are really doing this. Travis looked back at her, and something in his expression made her chest ache. 4 years ago, my sister found herself in a situation. Man she thought loved her left her with a baby on the way and no wedding ring on her finger. She tried to go to a church for help, and they turned her away. Told her she had made her bed and now had to lie in it. She was 17 years old, and they turned her out into the snow. His jaw tightened. She died 3 days later, her and the baby both. So when I see a woman being treated like garbage just for existing, I tend to have strong feelings about it. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with grief and anger and a loneliness that mirrored her own. Priscilla felt tears threaten again, but this time she let one slide down her cheek. I am so sorry. Me too. He opened the door. Get some rest, Priscilla. Things will look better in the morning. He was gone before she could ask how he knew her name, though she supposed he must have heard it during her exchange with the innkeeper. Alone in the quiet room, Priscilla sank onto the edge of the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. Not from despair this time, but from the unexpected gift of genuine human kindness. A knock came 20 minutes later, but it was only a young Mexican girl with a tray of food, venison stew and cornbread that Priscilla ate mechanically, tasting nothing. She washed using the cold water in the pitcher, changed into her nightgown, and crawled under the quilt as darkness settled over Hillsboro. Exhaustion pulled at her like an undertow, but she forced herself to stay awake until she heard 3 measured knocks on the door. It is Travis, his voice came through the wood. She opened the door to find him carrying saddle bags and a bedroll. He had removed his gun belt and carried it looped over one shoulder. Got everything I need, he said quietly. I will just make my bed over by the window and try not to snore too loud. You could take the bed, Priscilla offered. You paid for it. Paid for you to have somewhere safe to sleep. I am fine on the floor, done it often enough. He spread his bedroll with practiced efficiency, then sat down to pull off his boots. You can blow out the lamp whenever you are ready. Priscilla climbed back into bed, hyper-aware of his presence just feet away. She extinguished the lamp, plunging the room into darkness broken only by moonlight through the window. The bed creaked as she settled, and she heard Travis shift on the floor. Travis, she whispered. Yeah, thank you, for what you did. No one has shown me that kind of mercy in a very long time. His voice came soft through the darkness. You are welcome. Sleep well, Priscilla. She lay awake for a long time, listening to his breathing even out into the rhythm of sleep, and marveled at the strangeness of finding safety in the presence of a man she had met only hours before. Morning came with pale light and the sound of wagons in the street below. Priscilla woke disoriented, her body stiff from genuine rest for the first time in weeks. Travis was already up, his bedroll neatly stowed, standing at the washstand in his shirt sleeves shaving with a straight razor. He had shucked his vest and suspenders hung loose at his sides, and Priscilla found herself noticing the breadth of his shoulders and the way his dark hair curled slightly at his collar. He caught her reflection in the small mirror and turned. Morning. I tried to be quiet. You were. She sat up, acutely aware of her nightgown and loose hair. What time is it? Just past 7. I was thinking we should talk about our story before we go down to breakfast. The innkeeper is going to be watching us like a hawk, and if we do not seem like a proper married couple, she will likely throw us both out. Reality crashed back over Priscilla. She had been so exhausted last night that she had not thought through the implications of Travis's deception. You are right. What should we say? He wiped the remaining soap from his jaw and pulled his suspenders up over his shoulders. Keep it simple. We met in St. Louis 2 years ago, got married last spring. I came west looking for work while you settled your mother's estate. You joined me as soon as you could. We are hoping to make enough money to buy some land and start a ranch of our own. That is very detailed. Best lies are built on truth. I am from St. Louis originally. Lost my folks young and drifted west working cattle. Always wanted my own spread someday. He pulled on his vest and buckled his gun belt with smooth motions that spoke of long practice. Now you tell me something true about yourself that we can weave in. Priscilla hugged her knees to her chest, considering. My mother really did die 6 months ago. She had been sick for a long time and the medical bills were crushing. My father died when I was 16 and he left nothing but debts. I tried to hold on to our house, tried to find respectable work, but doors kept closing. She took a breath. Finally, the only door that opened led somewhere I never thought I would go. I worked in a saloon in Kansas City for 3 months before I realized that path only led to darker places. So, I ran. Travis sat down on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. His eyes held no judgment, only understanding. That took courage, or cowardice, depending on how you look at it. I call it courage. Easier to stay on a bad path than to strike out for something better. He stood and offered his hand to help her up. Get dressed, and we will go face the wolves together. Just remember, we are Mr. and Mrs. Travis Xander, married and respectable, and anyone who says different can answer to me. The possessive edge in his voice sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. Priscilla dressed quickly once he stepped into the hallway, choosing her least worn dress, a deep green cotton that brought out the hazel in her eyes. She pinned her hair up carefully and pinched her cheeks for color before opening the door to find Travis leaning against the wall, waiting. Breakfast was served in a dining room off the main parlor, and a dozen pairs of eyes tracked their entrance. Travis kept his hand at the small of Priscilla's back, the gesture both protective and proprietary. The innkeeper seated them at a table near the window and poured coffee with barely concealed hostility. "Sleep well?" the woman asked, her tone suggesting she hoped they had not. "Very well, thank you," Travis replied easily. "My wife was exhausted from her journey. It is good to finally have her by my side again." He reached across the table and took Priscilla's hand, his calloused fingers warm and surprisingly gentle. She met his eyes and saw encouragement there, a silent reminder that they were playing roles. She squeezed his hand and forced a smile. "I missed you terribly. Letters are poor substitutes for the real thing. Tell me about it." His thumb stroked across her knuckles, and she felt the touch all the way to her bones. "Felt like you were gone for years instead of months." They maintained the charade through eggs and biscuits, speaking in the easy shorthand of long familiarity. Travis told stories about his fictional cattle drives, embellishing just enough to be entertaining, and Priscilla found herself laughing genuinely at his dry humor. Other diners gradually lost interest in them, conversations returning to normal volume, and by the time they finished eating, some of the tension had bled from the room. Back in their room, Priscilla exhaled shakily. "I think they believed us. For now." Travis retrieved his hat from the bedpost. "I need to head over to the mining office and see about work. You should probably stay here where it is safe. I cannot hide in this room forever. I need to find employment myself." His expression clouded. "What kind of work are you looking for? Anything respectable?" "I can cook, clean, so keep books. I had 3 years of schooling back east. That is more education than most folks out here." He considered her for a moment. "There is a general store across the street. Looked like they might need help with inventory. Owner is a woman, Mrs. Chen." Chinese lady who came over with the railroad workers. She is fair-minded from what I hear. You would really help me find work. Priscilla, I am not trying to keep you dependent on me. I figure we are in this together until you get on your feet, and that means helping however I can. He paused at the door. Just be careful. Keep the wedding ring story going. You are safer as a married woman than on your own. After he left, Priscilla tidied the room and steeled her nerve before venturing downstairs. The innkeeper watched her cross the parlor but said nothing. Outside, the November air was crisp and thin at this elevation, the sun brilliant against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Hillsboro sprawled along a dusty main street, false-fronted buildings crowded together like teeth, horses tied at every hitching post. Men outnumbered women 10 to 1, and Priscilla felt their stares like brands as she crossed the street. Chen's general store smelled of coffee and pickle brine and cotton fabric. The interior was dim after the bright street, shelves crammed with goods ranging from mining equipment to bolts of cloth. A small woman with silver-streaked black hair and shrewd dark eyes looked up from behind the counter. "Help you?" she asked in accented but clear English. "I am looking for work," Priscilla said. "My husband and I just arrived in town, and I wondered if you might need help in the store." Mrs. Chen studied her with eyes that missed nothing. "You know inventory, can read and write?" "Yes, madam." "I kept books for my mother's boarding house back in St. Louis." "Boarding house, eh?" Something shifted in the woman's expression. "What is your name?" "Priscilla Xander. My husband is Travis Xander. He is looking for mining work." "Xander, that the big cowboy staying at the Silver Bell?" Word really did travel fast in small towns. Priscilla nodded. "I hear he claimed you as his wife when old Mrs. Henderson tried to turn you away." Mrs. Chen came around the counter, moving with surprising grace despite her age. "I hear other things too." Rumors from Silver City about a young woman running from a saloon, leaving debts behind. Priscilla's heart sank. "I paid what I owed before I left. Every cent. I believe you. Takes courage to walk away from easy money." The older woman's face softened slightly. "I came to this country with nothing, worked as a laundry woman for men who spat on me in the street. I know something about hard choices and new starts. Then you understand why I need this work." "I do. I also understand you are going to face ugliness here." Small town, lots of men with nothing better to do than gossip like old women. Mrs. Chen crossed her arms. "But I could use help. Store is getting busy with winter coming. Miners stocking up, ranchers coming to town before the snows. Pay is 50 cents a day, 6 days a week. You work hard, keep your head down, and we will get along fine." Relief washed through Priscilla so intensely her knees went weak. "Thank you. You will not regret this. We will see. You can start tomorrow morning. Come at 7, ready to work." Mrs. Chen returned to her place behind the counter. "And Mrs. Xander, that husband of yours, he did a good thing standing up for you. Do not take that lightly. Good men are rarer than gold in these parts." Priscilla left the store feeling lighter than she had in months. She had work, legitimate work, and a safe place to sleep. It was more than she had dared hope for when she climbed off that stagecoach yesterday. She walked back to the inn with her head high, ignoring the stares. Travis returned as afternoon shadows stretched long across the floor. Priscilla had been reading a battered dime novel she found in the room, and she looked up as he entered, noting the dust coating his clothes and the weariness in his face. "How did it go?" she asked. He pulled off his hat and raked his hand through sweat-dampened hair. "Got hired at the Opportunity Mine. Start tomorrow at dawn. Pay is $3 a day if I can handle the work." He sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "It is hard labor, drilling and blasting, but it is honest money." "I got hired too," Priscilla said, unable to contain her smile. At the general store, Mrs. Chen gave me a chance. Something warm kindled in Travis's expression. That is good news, real good news. Then his smile faded. But there is something we need to discuss. I was in the assayer's office earlier and I overheard some men talking. They know about you, about Kansas City. One of them was making crude suggestions about what kind of entertainment you might provide. The joy leaked out of Priscilla like water from cracked clay. I see. I set them straight. Travis's voice went hard. Told them you were my wife, and if I heard any man in this town disrespecting you, I would take it personal. That shut them up for now, but Priscilla, this pretense of being married, it needs to hold up under scrutiny. People are going to be watching us, looking for cracks in the story. What are you suggesting? He stood and paced to the window, his back to her. I am suggesting we need to be convincing. Act like newlyweds, touch each other in public, maybe even show some affection. Nothing improper, just enough to sell the illusion. You want us to pretend to be in love. I want us to stay safe. He turned back to her. Look, I know this is not what either of us planned, but we are in it now, and the only way forward is to commit to the role completely. Can you do that? Priscilla thought about the alternative, about being run out of another town, about the slow slide back toward the life she had escaped. Yes, she said quietly. I can do that. Good. Some of the tension left his shoulders. There is a social at the church Saturday night. Community gathering, music and dancing. We should go. Let people see us as a proper couple. I do not know if I am ready for that. Travis crossed the room and knelt before her chair, bringing his eyes level with hers. This close, she could see flecks of gray in the blue, could count the sun-carved lines at the corners. You are stronger than you think, Priscilla Sawyer. You survived things that would have broken most people. You can survive a church social. The fact that he used her real surname, acknowledging the woman she was beneath the fiction, touched something deep in her chest. You are a strange man, Travis Xander. Most cowboys would not go to this much trouble for a stranger. Maybe I am not most cowboys. He stood and offered his hand. Come on. Let us go get some supper before the dining room gets crowded. And remember, you are madly in love with me. She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet, and when she stumbled slightly, he caught her around the waist with his free hand, steadying her. They stood close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, smell the dust and sweat and something essentially male about him. His eyes darkened as he looked down at her, and for just a moment, Priscilla forgot they were pretending. Sorry, she whispered, though she was not certain what she was apologizing for. Do not be. His voice had gone rough. He released her carefully and stepped back. We should go. Dinner passed in a blur of stolen glances and casual touches that felt increasingly less casual. Travis regaled the other diners with an elaborate story about their wedding, describing a ceremony that sounded so real Priscilla could almost see it. She added details when prompted, and somewhere in the weaving of their shared fiction, she began to wish it were true. That night, lying in the darkness with Travis breathing steadily on his bedroll by the window, Priscilla stared at the ceiling and tried to untangle her feelings. She barely knew this man, yet he had shown her more kindness in 2 days than she had experienced in the past year. He was handsome in a rough-hewn way, and when he smiled, something in her chest went tight. But she could not afford to confuse gratitude with anything deeper. He was helping her out of obligation to his dead sister's memory, not because he felt anything for her personally. Still, as she drifted toward sleep, she caught herself imagining what it might be like if the pretense were real, if she truly were Travis Xander's wife in more than name. The thought brought both warmth and ache, a reminder of how lonely she had been for so very long. The next days fell into a rhythm. Travis left before dawn for the mines, returning after dark exhausted and covered in ore dust. Priscilla worked at Chen's general store, learning inventory and managing accounts with a quick mind that delighted Mrs. Chen. In the evenings, they shared meals in the inn's dining room, playing their roles with increasing ease. Travis was an attentive stage husband, pulling out her chair, asking about her day, touching her hand or shoulder in ways that made her pulse quicken even as she reminded herself it was all performance. By Friday, Priscilla had begun to feel almost settled. She had survived a full week without scandal or disaster, had earned $3 whole that felt like a fortune, and was starting to learn the rhythms of Hillsboro. But Friday night, everything shifted. They were finishing supper when a man approached their table, tall and lean with a face like weathered saddle leather. He wore a marshal's star pinned to his vest, and his eyes were hard as agate as he looked down at them. "You would be Travis Xander," he said. It was not a question. Travis set down his fork slowly. "I am. Something I can help you with, Marshal Pike. Just wanted to introduce myself, see what kind of man pays double to room with a whore." His voice carried across the dining room, and conversation stopped like someone had fired a shot. Priscilla felt the blood drain from her face. Travis stood so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "You will apologize to my wife right now." Pike's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "Your wife, right?" "Funny thing, I sent a telegram to the courthouse in St. Louis, asking about marriage records for Travis Xander. Know what they told me? I do not much care. They told me no such record exists. Which makes me think you are running some kind of game, and I do not appreciate confidence men operating in my town." Travis moved fast, closing the distance between them, his hand hovering near his gun. "You want to call me a liar? Do it outside where we can discuss it properly." "Travis, no." Priscilla grabbed his arm, feeling the tension coiled in his muscles. She turned to the marshal, desperation making her bold. "We were married by a circuit preacher south of the city. It was not registered at the courthouse because he died a week later in a cholera outbreak. The records were lost." Pike's eyes swung to her, full of contempt. "Convenient story." "It is the truth." Her voice shook but held firm. "Travis is my husband in the eyes of God, and what you think about it does not change that fact. What I think is that this whole town would be better off if you got back on the stagecoach and took your business elsewhere. We do not need your kind here, corrupting decent folks." He looked at Travis. "And you, Xander, you are either a fool or a fraud. Either way, I will be watching you." He walked away before Travis could respond, his boot heels loud on the wooden floor. The dining room erupted in whispers, and Priscilla felt the weight of every eye. Travis took her hand, his grip almost painful. "Come on," he said roughly. "We are leaving." They climbed the stairs in silence, and the moment their door closed, Travis exploded into motion, pacing like a caged animal. "That sanctimonious son of a gun! Who does he think he is, talking to you that way? He is the law. He can make our lives very difficult if he wants to. Let him try." Travis wheeled on her, his eyes blazing. "I am not going to stand by and let people treat you like garbage. I do not care if he is the marshal or the president himself. You could have been killed, challenging him like that. He wears a gun. So do I." He pulled the weapon from its holster and set it on the washstand with exaggerated care, then scrubbed both hands over his face. "I am sorry. I should have kept my temper, but hearing him call you that, it just—" He trailed off, shoulders slumping. Priscilla moved to him slowly, unsure of her welcome. "Travis, you do not owe me this. I am grateful beyond words for everything you have done, but you should not put yourself at risk because of my past." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and what she saw in his face made her breath catch. "You think I am doing this out of obligation. Are you not?" Maybe it started that way. "But Priscilla, this past week, getting to know you, seeing how hard you work and how brave you are despite everything." He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "It stopped being about my sister days ago. Now it is about you. About the fact that I actually look forward to coming back to this room every night because you are here. About how your smile makes my whole day better and how angry I get when people hurt you." Her heart hammered so hard she was certain he could hear it. "You barely know me. I know enough." His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "I know you are kind and smart and stronger than steel. I know you make me laugh even after 12 hours in a mine shaft. I know that somewhere in the last week, this pretend marriage started feeling more real to me than it probably should." "Travis." His name was a whisper on her lips. "We cannot. This is complicated enough without adding feelings into it. Too late." He smiled, sad and hopeful at once. "At least for me. But if you do not feel the same, I will back off. We can keep things strictly practical, no emotions involved. I just needed you to know that when I defend you, when I claim you as mine, it is not just for show anymore." Priscilla stood frozen, her mind racing. Every instinct screamed that this was dangerous, that letting herself care for this man would only lead to heartbreak. But another part of her, the part that had been starving for genuine connection, for someone to see her as more than her mistakes, that part yearned toward him like a flower toward sun. "I am afraid," she admitted. "Afraid that if I let myself feel something for you, it will all fall apart. Afraid that you will realize I am not worth the trouble I bring." "Hey." He cupped her face in both hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are worth every bit of trouble and then some. You are worth standing up to small-minded marshals and gossiping innkeepers and anyone else who wants to make you feel less than you are." A tear slipped down her cheek, and he caught it with his thumb. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "How to let someone in. Neither do I. But maybe we can figure it out together." He leaned closer, his intention clear, giving her time to pull away. Priscilla did not pull away. She closed the remaining distance and kissed him, pouring all her confused hope and fear and gratitude into the press of her lips against his. Travis made a sound low in his throat and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her flush against him. The kiss deepened, turning from tentative to hungry, weeks of unspoken tension finally finding release. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Travis rested his forehead against hers. "Priscilla." "I feel it too," she said. "This past week, being with you, it has felt like coming home after being lost for so long. I tried to tell myself it was just gratitude, but it is more than that. You make me want to be brave enough to hope again." He kissed her again, softer this time, reverent. "Then hope. We will figure this out, I promise. We will make people believe we are married, and somewhere along the way maybe we will believe it too." They held each other in the lamplight, and Priscilla felt something shift in her chest, some locked door creaking open. It was terrifying and exhilarating at once, this feeling of falling without knowing if anyone would catch her. But Travis's arms around her felt solid and real, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she allowed herself to trust that maybe, just maybe, everything would be all right. Saturday evening arrived too quickly. Priscilla dressed carefully in her best outfit, a deep blue calico with cream-colored lace at the collar and cuffs. Mrs. Chen had given her the lace as a gift, saying every woman needed to look her best for church socials. Travis wore clean denim pants and a white shirt that made his eyes look impossibly blue, his dark hair still damp from washing. "You look beautiful," he said when she emerged from behind the privacy screen. You clean up rather well yourself." She fussed with his collar, straightening it, and he caught her hands and kissed them. "We do not have to go if you are not ready." "I am ready. We cannot hide forever." She squared her shoulders. "Besides, we have a performance to give." The church stood at the end of Main Street, a simple wooden building with a white steeple. Music drifted from the open doors, fiddle and guitar weaving together in a lively reel. Lanterns hung from the trees surrounding the building, and people milled about in their Sunday finest, talking and laughing. Conversation stuttered as Travis and Priscilla approached, and she felt the familiar prickle of hostile stares. But Travis tucked her hand into the crook of his elbow and walked with his head high, nodding greetings to people whether they responded or not. Inside, the church had been transformed, pews pushed against the walls to create a dance floor, tables laden with food along one side. At least 50 people filled the space, and the music paused as they entered. Into the silence, a woman's voice rang clear. "Travis Xander, is that you?" A figure detached from the crowd, moving toward them with surprising speed. She was perhaps 40, with dark hair going gray and a face that had been pretty once and was still handsome. She wore a simple brown dress and sensible shoes, and her smile was genuine as she reached them. "Mrs. Chen told me you were in town, but I hardly believed it. Last I heard, you were down in Texas." She turned to Priscilla. "And you must be his bride. I am Sarah Wilkins. I run the school here in Hillsboro." "Priscilla," she managed, confused by the woman's warmth. "It is nice to meet you." "Sarah and I met years ago," Travis explained. "I did some work on her brother's ranch down near El Paso." "That old scoundrel. How is Daniel?" "Married with 3 kids now. Got his own spread just outside of town." Sarah's face lit up. "That is wonderful news. He always did want a family." She linked her arm through Priscilla's, a gesture of casual acceptance that made Priscilla's throat tight. "Come, you two. Let me introduce you around properly. There are some good people in this town once you get past the gossips." She swept them into the crowd with such confidence that objections seemed to melt away. Priscilla met miners and shopkeepers, ranchers and their wives, and while some were cold, others responded to Sarah's obvious approval with tentative friendliness. By the time the music started again, Priscilla felt less like a pariah and more like a person. "Dance with me," Travis said, pulling her toward the floor. "I am not very good." "Neither am I. We will stumble through together." He was better than he claimed, guiding her through a simple waltz with easy grace. Priscilla focused on following his lead, trying not to step on his feet, and gradually became aware that they were smiling at each other like fools. "This is nice," she said. "It is." His hand tightened on her waist. "See, we can have a normal life here. I want to believe that." "Then believe it." He spun her, and she laughed, genuinely happy for the first time in so long. They danced 3 more songs before taking a break for refreshments. Sarah found them again, pressing glasses of lemonade into their hands and chattering about the school and how desperately she needed a teaching assistant if Priscilla was interested. It was all so normal, so wonderfully ordinary, that Priscilla felt tears threaten. Then Marshall Pike appeared at her elbow. "Mrs. Xander," he said, his tone making the title sound like an accusation. "Enjoying yourself? We are, thank you." She kept her voice level. "Interesting company you keep, Miss Wilkins." This he directed at Sarah. "You might want to be more careful about who you befriend. Reputation matters in a small town." Sarah's eyes went hard as granite. "Marshall Pike. I have been teaching in this town for 15 years, and in that time, I have learned that people who concern themselves overmuch with other people's business usually have something unpleasant to hide in their own lives. Perhaps you should examine your own reputation before casting aspersions on others." Pike's face flushed dark red. "I am just trying to protect the moral fiber of this community. By harassing a young couple trying to make an honest start. Funny definition of protection." Sarah looked him up and down like he was something she might scrape off her shoe. "Now, if you will excuse us, we were having a pleasant conversation before you interrupted." The marshal stalked away, and Sarah turned back to them with a rueful smile. "Sorry about that. Pike is a small man trying to make himself feel big by making others feel small. Do not let him get to you." "Why are you being so kind to us?" Priscilla asked. "You barely know me." "I know Travis, and that is enough. Also, I make it a policy to befriend anyone the marshal disapproves of, just on principle." She winked. "Besides, Mrs. Chen speaks highly of you, and that woman is the best judge of character I have ever met." After Sarah drifted away to greet other guests, Travis pulled Priscilla back onto the dance floor. They swayed to a slow song, and he held her close enough that she could rest her head on his shoulder. It felt like claiming each other in front of the whole town, a public declaration that they were together and not ashamed. "Thank you for this," Priscilla murmured against his shirt. "For what?" "For giving me a chance at a real life. For standing by me even when it would have been easier to walk away." His arms tightened around her. "Priscilla, I think you need to understand something. I am not planning on walking away. Not now, not ever. This thing between us, I know it started as pretend, but it is real now. At least it is for me." She pulled back to look at him, searching his face for any sign of doubt or deception. She found only honesty and something that looked remarkably like love. "It is real for me too," she admitted. "That terrifies me, but it is true. Then we will be terrified together." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Seems only fair, since we are supposedly married." They stayed at the social until late, dancing and talking and slowly building bridges into the community. Not everyone was welcoming, but enough people were civil that Priscilla dared to believe she might actually have a future here. Walking back to the inn under a sky full of stars, Travis's hand warm in hers, she felt something very close to happy. In the privacy of their room, they prepared for bed with an awareness of each other that had not been there before. Travis spread his bedroll as always, but when Priscilla settled under the quilt, he paused. "I could sleep on the bed," he said carefully, "if you wanted. On top of the covers, fully clothed, just so you would not be alone." Priscilla considered, her heart racing. They were already pretending to be married, they had kissed, they had admitted feelings for each other, and the truth was she did not want to be alone. "I would like that." He climbed onto the bed, settling on top of the quilt while she remained beneath it, a layer of fabric between them like a compromise. In the darkness, she felt him reach for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Good night, Priscilla." "Good night, Travis." She fell asleep holding his hand, feeling safer than she had in years. The next weeks passed in a blur of work and stolen moments. Travis labored in the mines while Priscilla managed the store, and in the evenings, they returned to each other with an eagerness that made the innkeeper purse her lips but say nothing. They attended church on Sundays, sat together at community meals, and slowly, grudgingly, Hillsboro began to accept them. There were still hard moments. A drunk miner made a crude proposition outside the store one afternoon, and Priscilla had to wait, trembling, while Mrs. Chen's husband escorted the man away. Whispers followed her down the street, and sometimes women pulled their children aside when she approached, as if her past were contagious. But there were good moments too. Sarah Wilkins invited them to dinner and treated them like old friends. The Chinese families who worked the laundry and vegetable gardens accepted her without question, and Priscilla found herself learning bits of Cantonese from Mrs. Chen's granddaughter. Travis made friends among the miners, Men who cared more about whether you could pull your weight than where you had come from. And every night, they fell asleep side by side, sometimes talking for hours in the darkness, sometimes simply holding each other. Travis was unfailingly respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, but the tension between them built like summer thunderheads, full of promise and potential energy. 3 weeks after the church social, everything changed. Priscilla was restocking shelves when the door burst open and a boy ran in, breathless and wild-eyed. "There has been an accident at the mine. Cave in. They are bringing out the injured now." The bolts of fabric she was holding crashed to the floor. Which mine? The Opportunity. North Tunnel. Travis's mine. Travis's tunnel. Priscilla ran. She did not remember the journey through town, did not feel the stones cutting her feet through her thin shoes or the stairs as she hiked her skirts and sprinted like a wild thing. The mine entrance was chaos, men shouting, a makeshift hospital area set up with blankets on the ground, the metallic taste of blood and dust thick in the air. She searched the faces of the injured, terror a living thing in her chest. Not Travis. Please, God, not Travis. Priscilla. She spun to find him standing behind her, coated in dust from head to toe, blood running from a cut above his eye, but alive. Gloriously, miraculously alive. Oh, thank God. She threw herself at him and he caught her, his arms crushing her against him despite his obvious pain. "I thought you were dead. I thought I had lost you. I am all right. Rock clipped me when the tunnel went, but I got out." He pulled back to look at her face, and what he saw there made something fierce and tender wash over his expression. "You were scared for me. Of course I was scared." Travis, The words stuck in her throat, too big and terrifying to voice in front of all these people. "Come on." He took her hand and led her away from the crowd, around behind the office building. His hands framed her face, thumbs wiping away tears she had not realized she was crying. "Say it. Whatever you were going to say, I need to hear it. I love you." The words tumbled out, raw and honest. "I know that is probably foolish, and it is too soon, and I am sure you do not feel the same way, but when I thought you might be dead, I realized that I cannot pretend any more. This is not about gratitude or convenience or playing a role. I love you, Travis Xander, and I cannot bear the thought of losing you." His smile was brilliant despite the blood and dust. "Too soon. Priscilla, I have been in love with you for 2 weeks. I was just trying to give you time, trying not to scare you off. But if we are being honest, then you should know that you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I want this to be real. Not pretend real, actually real." "What are you saying?" "I am saying marry me, for real this time. Make me the luckiest man in New Mexico." He kissed her with a desperation that had nothing to do with the accident and everything to do with two people who had finally found each other after being lost for so long. Priscilla kissed him back with equal fervor, tasting dust and copper and hope. "Yes," she said against his mouth. "Yes, I will marry you. I will be your wife in truth and not just in name." A cheer went up behind them, and they broke apart to find a dozen miners grinning at them. One called out, "About time, Xander. We have been taking bets on how long it would take you to make it official." Travis laughed and pulled Priscilla tight against his side. "Tell everyone the drinks are on me tonight to celebrate. I am getting married to the woman of my dreams." More cheers followed them as they walked back toward town, and by the time they reached the Silver Bell Inn, it seemed like half of Hillsboro had heard the news. The innkeeper actually smiled, a thin, grudging thing, but a smile nonetheless. "About time you made an honest woman of her," she said. "When is the ceremony?" "Soon as we can arrange it," Travis replied. "Unless Priscilla wants something fancy. I just want you." She looked up at him, this man who had defended her honor when the world wanted to strip it away, who had seen past her mistakes to the woman beneath. Tomorrow, next month, I do not care, as long as I get to be your wife. Tomorrow works for me." He kissed her temple. "I am going to go get cleaned up. Why do you not see if Sarah knows a preacher who can do the ceremony?" Sarah did, of course. The circuit preacher was due in Hillsboro in 3 days, and Sarah took charge of arrangements with the enthusiasm of a general planning a campaign. Priscilla tried to protest that she did not need a fuss, but Sarah waved her objections away. Every woman deserves a proper wedding. Besides, this will be good for both of you. Show the town that you are committed to each other and to being part of this community. The next 3 days passed in a whirlwind. Mrs. Chen gave Priscilla time off to prepare, and the Chinese women sewed her a dress from cream-colored silk that must have cost more than Priscilla made in a month. Sarah organized food for a reception, and Travis's friends at the mine took up a collection to buy them a set of dishes and a real wedding ring. The night before the ceremony, Priscilla and Travis sat on the porch of the Silver Bell, watching the sun set over the desert hills. His arm was around her shoulders and she leaned into his warmth. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "Not even a little. You. Only thought I am having is wondering what I did to deserve you." She turned to face him. "You saw me when everyone else looked away. You stood up for me when it would have been easier to walk past. You gave me a chance to be something more than my worst mistake. You were always more than that, Priscilla. I just helped you remember it." He kissed her softly. "I promise you, I am going to spend the rest of my life making you as happy as you make me." "That is a dangerous promise. I plan to make you very happy." His laugh was low and warm. "I am counting on it." They sat together until the stars came out, making plans for their future. Travis wanted to save money to buy land for a ranch. Priscilla wanted to continue working at the store until they could afford it. They talked about children, though both agreed they wanted time to simply be married first. They talked about building a house, something small and sturdy that they would make into a real home. "I never thought I would have this," Priscilla admitted. "A future, a husband, a chance at normal happiness. There were nights when I thought about just giving up, letting the darkness swallow me whole. Promise me you will never think that way again. Promise me that no matter how hard things get, you will remember that you are loved and wanted and worth fighting for." "I promise." "As long as you promise the same. You have suffered losses too, Travis. You carry scars. We will heal each other." He stood and pulled her to her feet. "Come on, big day tomorrow, and I want my bride well rested." That night they slept as they had for weeks, side by side on top of and beneath the quilt, hands intertwined. But tomorrow, Priscilla thought as sleep claimed her, tomorrow everything would be different. Tomorrow she would become Travis's wife in truth, and the thought filled her with a joy so fierce it felt like flying. The wedding took place in the church at noon, sunshine streaming through the windows and painting everything gold. Priscilla wore her silk dress with wildflowers in her hair, courtesy of Sarah, and walked down the aisle to where Travis waited in a borrowed suit that was slightly too tight in the shoulders. His smile when he saw her was worth every hard moment that had brought them to this place. The circuit preacher was a young man with kind eyes and a deep voice, and he spoke about love and commitment and second chances in a way that made Priscilla's eyes sting with tears. When it came time for the vows, Travis took both her hands in his and spoke with a raw honesty that silenced the entire church. "Priscilla, I promise to stand by you in good times and bad, to defend you against anyone who tries to hurt you, to love you with everything I have for as long as I live. You saved me just as much as I saved you, and I am going to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift." Through her tears, Priscilla managed her own vows. "Travis, you gave me hope when I had none. You saw the best in me when I had forgotten it existed. I promise to love you, to stand by you, to build a life with you that is full of joy and laughter and all the happiness we both deserve." The ring Travis slid onto her finger was simple silver, but to Priscilla, it was more precious than gold. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Travis kissed her with such tenderness that she felt it all the way to her soul, and the small crowd erupted in applause. The reception was held in the churchyard, tables laden with food and a small band playing cheerful music. People who had turned their backs on Priscilla weeks ago came to offer congratulations, their acceptance grudging but real. Marshal Pike even made an appearance, though he said nothing, simply nodded curtly before leaving. Priscilla counted it as progress. As evening fell, Travis whisked her away from the celebration, claiming his right to be alone with his bride. They walked back to the Silver Bell through streets washed in twilight, and everything felt different now, charged with anticipation and promise. The innkeeper had moved them to a larger room, one with actual furniture beyond just a bed, and someone had left flowers on the dresser. Travis locked the door behind them and turned to face Priscilla, suddenly looking nervous. "I know we have been sleeping in the same room for weeks, but this is different. And I want you to know that we do not have to do anything you are not ready for. We can take our time." Priscilla crossed to him, her heart full to bursting. "Travis, I love you. I want to be your wife in every way. I am ready." His kiss was searching, asking permission, and she granted it by deepening the contact, by pressing herself against him and letting him feel her desire. They came together with a tenderness that gradually gave way to passion, discovering each other in the lamplight with gentle hands and whispered words. Travis was patient and careful, and when he made love to her, it was with a reverence that erased every ugly experience from her past, replacing them with beauty and connection, and a pleasure so intense it made her weep. Afterward they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on her bare shoulder. "I love you," he murmured against her hair. "So much it scares me sometimes. I love you too. Thank you for this, for all of it, for giving me back my life. You gave me mine too. I was just drifting before I met you, no purpose or direction. Now I have something worth working for, worth building toward." He kissed her forehead. "We are going to have a good life, Priscilla Xander. I promise you that." She believed him. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she believed in promises and futures and the possibility of happily ever after. The months that followed were not easy, but they were good. Travis continued working at the mine, and Priscilla became indispensable at the general store. They saved every penny they could, building toward their dream of land and a ranch. Some people in town remained cold, but most gradually accepted them, won over by their obvious devotion to each other and their contributions to the community. Sarah Wilkins recruited Priscilla to help teach reading to the miners' children, and Priscilla discovered she had a gift for it. Travis made friends easily, his quiet strength and dry humor earning respect among the men he worked with. Together they built a life in Hillsboro, one friendship and one day at a time. Winter came to the high desert, cold and sharp, and Priscilla discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror, all her old insecurities rising up. What if she was a terrible mother? What if her past somehow tainted her child? Travis held her while she cried, whispering reassurances. "You are going to be an amazing mother. Our child is going to be so loved, so wanted. And if anyone ever tries to hold your past against them, they will have to go through me first." Their son was born on a warm day in June 1883, red-faced and squalling and absolutely perfect. They named him Thomas after Travis's father, and from the moment Travis held that tiny bundle in his big scarred hands, Priscilla knew their family was complete. but life had more surprises in store. 2 years later, a daughter arrived, fierce and beautiful, and they named her Rose. Then, 3 years after that, another son whom they called William. The little house they had finally saved enough to build rang with laughter and noise, and Priscilla could hardly remember the lost, desperate woman who had arrived in Hillsboro on that stagecoach so many years ago. Travis proved to be a devoted father, patient with the children's endless questions and tireless in his efforts to provide for his growing family. He eventually left the mines to work full-time on the small ranch they had purchased, raising cattle and horses with skill born of years on the trail. Priscilla continued teaching part-time, passing on her love of learning to a new generation of children growing up in the wild, hard land of southern New Mexico. Marshall Pike retired and moved away, replaced by a younger man who cared more about actual crimes than moral judgments. The town continued to grow as the mines produced silver and people flooded west chasing opportunities. But through all the changes, Travis and Priscilla remained constants, pillars of their community, their love story becoming the stuff of local legend. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Travis took Priscilla back to the Silver Bell Inn for dinner, a rare evening away from the children who were being watched by Sarah Wilkins. The old innkeeper had long since died, replaced by her daughter, who greeted them with warmth. Over steak and potatoes, Travis raised his glass of water in a toast. "To my beautiful wife, who made me the luckiest man alive when she agreed to marry me." "To my husband," Priscilla countered, "who saw me when I was invisible, who stood up for me when the world wanted to tear me down, who gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams." "I did not give you anything. You earned it all yourself." "We built it together," she corrected. "That is the point. Neither of us could have done this alone." They clinked glasses and drank, and Travis reached across the table to take her hand. "Do you ever think about that first night, when I told the innkeeper you were my wife and paid double?" "I think about it all the time. I think about how close I came to giving up, and how you appeared like some kind of miracle." "Not a miracle, just a man who could not stand to see injustice." "You were more than that. You were exactly what I needed, exactly when I needed it," she smiled. "Do you remember what you said to me that night? In the room when I asked what you wanted from me? I said I wanted nothing, just for you not to assume the worst of me. And you kept that promise. You never asked for anything I was not ready to give. You let me heal at my own pace." Her eyes shone with emotion. "I love you more today than I did the day we married, and I loved you so much then I thought my heart would burst." Travis stood and moved around the table, pulling her to her feet and into his arms. Right there in the middle of the dining room, he kissed her with the passion of newlyweds and the depth of a love tested by time and hardship and proven true. When they finally broke apart, aware of the other diners watching with indulgent smiles, Travis whispered against her lips, "Let us go home. I want to show my wife just how much I love her." They walked through the warm June night hand in hand, their shadows long in the lamplight. The town had grown up around them, but it was still home, still the place where their story began. Priscilla looked up at the stars scattered across the vast black sky and felt a peace so profound it was almost painful. She had been broken, had been judged and dismissed and cast aside. But Travis had seen her worth when no one else would, had given her the chance to prove that people could change, that past mistakes did not have to define your future. Together, they had built something real and lasting from the ruins of their separate pasts. Years continued to pass in the way they do, each day bleeding into the next, creating a tapestry of ordinary moments that together made an extraordinary life. Thomas grew tall and serious, with his father's quiet strength. Rose became a teacher like her mother, fierce in her defense of the underdog. William inherited his father's easy charm and his mother's quick mind. Travis and Priscilla grew older together, their faces lined by sun and laughter, their bodies marked by hard work and the passage of time. But their love never dimmed, never faded. If anything, it grew deeper, richer, tempered by shared joys and weathered sorrows into something unbreakable. On a winter evening many years after that first meeting, Travis and Priscilla sat on the porch of their ranch house, wrapped in blankets against the cold. Their children were grown and gone, building their own lives, but they visited often, bringing grandchildren who filled the house with noise and chaos and delight. "You ever regret it?" Priscilla asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on a ruined woman in a dusty town?" Travis looked at her, this woman who had been his partner for more than 3 decades, and smiled. "Not for one single second. You were never ruined, Priscilla. You were just waiting for someone to see the truth of who you really were." "And who was that?" "A woman of courage and grace and strength. A woman worth fighting for. A woman I have been proud to call my wife every day of my life." Tears gathered in her eyes, as they still did whenever he said things like that, even after all these years. "I love you, Travis Xander." "I love you too, Priscilla Xander. Always have, always will." They sat together as the sun set over the desert hills, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, two souls who had found each other in the darkness and built a light bright enough to last a lifetime. The innkeeper had said no rooms for ruined women, but a cowboy had said she was his wife and paid double. And in doing so, he had changed both their lives forever, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with a single act of defiance against injustice, a moment of courage that opens the door to everything that follows. Their story became legend in Hillsboro, passed down through generations as a reminder that people deserve second chances, that love can flourish in unexpected places, and that standing up for what is right can change not just one life, but many. Long after Travis and Priscilla were gone, their descendants would tell the tale of how their great-grandparents met, how a cowboy saw worth in a woman the world had dismissed, and how together they built a legacy of love and courage that would endure long after the Wild West faded into history. But for Travis and Priscilla, sitting on that porch in the fading light, their story was not legend. It was simply their life, the beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary life they had built together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, from that first moment when Travis Xander looked at Priscilla Sawyer and decided that she deserved to be defended, to be protected, to be loved. And love her he did, with every breath in his body, until the very end of his days. As she loved him, fiercely and completely, grateful every day for the gift of a man who saw her when she was invisible, who stood for her when she had no strength to stand alone, who gave her back her belief in goodness and hope and the possibility of happily ever after. They lived their years surrounded by family and friends, contributing to their community, showing through their example that redemption was possible, that love could overcome judgment, that two broken people could heal each other and build something beautiful from the shattered pieces of their pasts. Thomas married a rancher's daughter and took over the family business, expanding it until it became one of the most successful operations in the territory. Rose opened a school for girls in Santa Fe, fighting for education for all children regardless of their background. William became a lawyer, dedicating his practice to defending those who could not defend themselves, carrying on his father's legacy of standing up for the vulnerable. And through it all, Travis and Priscilla remained the heart of their family, the foundation upon which everything else was built. They grew old together with grace, their love deepening with each passing year until it became as much a part of them as breathing, When Travis finally passed away at the age of 73, Priscilla held his hand and whispered her love one last time. He smiled at her, his blue eyes still bright despite his failing body, and used his last breath to tell her she had made his life complete. Priscilla lived 3 more years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, telling stories of the Wild West and the cowboy who had saved her life by claiming her as his wife. She spoke of Travis with such love that even the youngest children understood they were hearing about something rare and precious, a love that transcended time and circumstance. On the morning she died, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76, her family found a letter she had written, addressed to all of them. In it, she told the story of that first night in Hillsboro, when she was lost and desperate and certain her life was over. She described how Travis had appeared like an answer to a prayer she had been too broken to voice, how he had stood up to an innkeeper who wanted to turn her away, how he had paid double for a room and called her his wife to protect her reputation. She wrote about how that single act of kindness had saved her life in every way a person could be saved. She described the love that had grown between them, tentative at first and then blazing bright, a love that sustained her through every challenge and celebrated every joy. She wrote about the life they had built, the family they had created, the legacy they would leave behind, and she ended the letter with these words: "Never turn away from someone in need. Never judge another person's worth based on their past mistakes. Never underestimate the power of standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult or unpopular. Your grandfather taught me these lessons, and they are the most valuable inheritance I can pass on to you. Love fiercely, forgive freely, and always remember that every person deserves a chance at redemption." The letter was framed and hung in Thomas's home, and for generations, the Xander family would gather beneath it and tell the story of Travis and Priscilla, the cowboy and the woman the world had dismissed, who built a love strong enough to last beyond death itself. In the end, their story was not about scandal or redemption, though it contained both. It was not about the Wild West or mining towns or the harsh realities of frontier life, though all of those things shaped it. At its heart, their story was about the simple, profound truth that love can bloom in the most unlikely places, between the most unlikely people, when given the chance to grow. Travis Xander had seen a woman in need and responded with courage and kindness. Priscilla Sawyer had accepted help from a stranger and found the strength to hope again. Together, they had built something beautiful, something lasting, something worth remembering. And in Hillsboro, New Mexico, where it all began, people still tell their story. They speak of the innkeeper who said no rooms for ruined women, and the cowboy who said she was his wife and paid double. They talk about true love and second chances, and the power of standing up for what is right. They remember Travis and Priscilla Xander as proof that the best love stories are not about perfection, but about broken people finding wholeness in each other, about courage in the face of judgment, about choosing love even when the world says you should not. Their graves rest side by side in the cemetery on the hill overlooking town, a simple marker bearing both their names and a single inscription: "Together always." And on summer evenings, when the sun sets over the desert and paints the sky in shades of copper and gold, it is easy to imagine their spirits still walking hand in hand through the town they called home, their love story echoing through the years like a promise that goodness and love and hope can triumph over even the darkest circumstances. That is the legacy of Travis and Priscilla Xander, the cowboy and the woman he saved, who saved him right back, who built a life together that proved love is the most powerful force in the world, capable of transforming lives and creating beauty from ashes. Their story ended not with tragedy or regret, but with fulfillment and joy and the knowledge that they had lived fully and loved completely, leaving behind a family and a legacy that would endure for generations. And that, in the end, is the very best kind of happily ever after.